In the most recent Nintendo Direct, we got our first look at The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom, a brand new 2D game featuring Princess Zelda as the main protagonist. The game isn't your standard top-down Zelda adventure, however. It introduces new sandbox elements to both exploration and combat, allowing Zelda to create copies of almost any object and enemy she encounters throughout her quest. The game is set to release very soon, on September 26th of this year, and I can't wait. It looks like such a creative twist on the classic Zelda formula. Echoes of Wisdom was featured for a little under 5 minutes in the Nintendo Direct, giving us a lot of footage to comb through for secrets. So let's break this trailer down. The trailer begins with Link running through a castle. Immediately, we can tell that this game will reuse the engine and the art style from the Link's Awakening Switch remake from 2019, continuing the same toy-like aesthetic. Link looks a little different here, however. He's clad in a new cloak and wields a new sword. Later on in the trailer, we see Link use a new bow, also in the same style, a teal-green colour with the same square spiral patterns. The design of Link's new equipment is reminiscent of both the Zonai and the Twilight, but for now, we don't know anything about what they are or how they fit into the game's story and lore. Link uses his new sword to dispatch a group of Darknuts with the spin attack, and then heads towards his goal, Princess Zelda, imprisoned within a crystal, in a similar fashion to games like A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. As you'd expect, this is the work of Ganon. Link throws off his cloak, and battle begins. The fight against Ganon shows him using his signature techniques. He lunges with his trident, teleports, and throws energy balls at Link, which he reflects in a game of Dead Man's Volley. We see Link jump a few times in the fight, similar to how he can jump with the Rock's Feather, and he even manages to perform an aerial spin attack to finish Ganon off. Ganon's trident remains, however, and we can get a good look at the weapon. Its design is similar to its appearance in the Nightmare battle at the end of Link's Awakening, of course, but this one has a special power. Though its master is defeated, the trident opens up a magical chasm in the floor, causing Link to fall into the darkness. As he drops, he looses an arrow from his new bow, which cracks the crystal imprisoning Zelda. Now freed, the princess runs away from the rapidly expanding chasm, and we can get a look inside the void, where we can see a dimension of purple clouds and floating stone ruins. We'll come back to these chasms later on. Zelda escapes outside, and the chasm stops expanding just before swallowing her whole, but it remains as a crack in the world. This is one of the best shots of the trailer. Zelda recreates the famous Breath of the Wild intro and stands on a cliff edge facing the game's world as the title is revealed, Echoes of Wisdom. Wisdom obviously comes from the Triforce of Wisdom, the piece of the sacred artifact most commonly held by Princess Zelda and the attribute she embodies the most. Echoes refers to the game's central mechanic, which we'll see a lot more of as the trailer continues. Interestingly, this shot of Hyrule shows us that the game's map will be very closely based on the Hyrule from A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, with Hyrule Castle visible in the centre, and the Eastern Palace to, well, the east. It's not exactly the same though, it's far bigger, with many locations we'll see later on in the trailer that didn't appear in previous games set in this version of Hyrule. We can see what looks to be Death Mountain in the northwest of the map, and Hyrule Castle itself seems to contain a small settlement, which it didn't in previous games. We see this settlement in the very next shot, Hyrule Castle Town, which has also been affected by the mysterious chasms. A house is partially covered in a purple void, meaning that section of the house will have been transported to the world on the other side, which, again, we'll see in more detail later on. Just north of the house we can spot a weather vane. These appeared in A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and A Link Between Worlds, but most importantly in the latter, where they could be found all across the game worlds, serving as save points and fast travel locations. It's possible that they'll serve the same functions in this game too, but we see another candidate for fast travel markers later on, making me think that this is just a weather vane. Next, we see another section of the world affected by a rift, a river just downstream from two small huts. The rightmost features a bag symbol above the door, making it likely that this is a shop where Zelda will be able to buy items. A rift opens and swallows a Hyrulean woman whole, probably part of one of the game's opening cutscenes. A man walking with her turns but is unable to save her. Perhaps he lost his wife to the void. The next shot shows our first look at Zelda since the intro. She appears to be in a prison cell. Here she meets Tri, a mysterious fairy who will be her companion for this game. Tri summons the Tri Rod, which is able to channel the princess's wisdom and perform her new abilities. The fact that Zelda is found in a prison cell here is very reminiscent of the beginning of A Link to the Past. Later on in the trailer, we see who could be the princess's nursemaid, Impa, fighting Hylian soldiers on Zelda's behalf. So it looks like Hyrule's military will turn on its own princess at the start of the game. Perhaps they are possessed like in A Link to the Past. Either way, it doesn't seem like this will be permanent, as we see much friendlier soldiers in other shots in the trailer. The Tri-Rod will perform Zelda's new ability, and the game's central mechanic, learning and creating echoes. By waving the Tri-Rod at an object, Zelda will learn how to create an imitation of it, and can then summon it wherever she wants. We see Zelda learn the echo for a small table, and then in the next two shots, she summons them in the overworld, showing how echoes can be used to climb to otherwise unreachable areas. It seems that the amount of echoes Zelda can summon are indicated by the triangles that follow Tri. In this clip, we see Tri followed by 4 smaller triangles, but once Zelda has placed 2 tables, it's followed by only 2. We can see the other triangles floating above the echoes she has created, meaning that once she has summoned 4, she won't be able to create any more without despawning earlier ones. This limit will be increased throughout the game. In different shots in the trailer, we can see Tri followed by different numbers of triangles, and it seems that more powerful echoes will cost more to summon. Simple objects like the table are marked with 1 triangle symbol, but more complex echoes like a moblin are marked with 2, and decrease Tri's triangle count by 2. This is such a creative idea, turning a classic 2D Zelda game into something more sandboxy, where players can solve puzzles and fight enemies in whatever way they want. In fact, AG Aonuma mentions this, claiming that they've created a game where each player's experience will be different. Aonuma also claims that there are so many possible echoes in the game that even he's not sure on the total. Aside from the uses of the Tri-Rod, this shot shows us our first look at the game's UI, which, as you can expect, is very similar to the Switch remake of Link's Awakening that the game is based on. There's a symbol showing the currently equipped Echo in the top right, which can be summoned with the Y button, and a D-pad on the left, just below the hearts, which shows the Tri-Rod on the right. Later on in the trailer, we see Zelda open the Echo's slider menu, which I'd guess can be done by pressing or holding down right on the D-pad. This opens a menu very reminiscent of the Fuse Materials menu in Tears of the Kingdom, where all of Zelda's learned echoes appear in a line. This can be sorted with the Y button in a few different ways, like last used, and pressing plus will open the notebook, which will likely give a little bit of information on each echo. Once the player selects an echo from the slider, this will replace whichever is currently equipped, and can be then summoned by pressing Y. We can also see the game's minimap in the bottom right, complete with a strange glowing symbol. We can actually see what this is, and it's this. Some sort of stone structure, glowing with yellow dots and lines. The dots and lines are reminiscent of the stone we can see behind Zelda in the beginning, and can also be seen on the floor and walls in this chamber too. It seems almost like Morse code, a language made of dots and dashes, but regardless, these stones across the overworld are definitely connected to whatever this temple is. We could see another of these objects during the title reveal, just next to this cave, and notably, this one isn't glowing. So perhaps these are fast travel points, which must be found and activated before they can be used. There's another one found here, in this town, which would make sense if they can be used to warp. This town doesn't seem to be Castle Town. Judging by its design and the minimap, instead it seems likely that this is Kakariko Village, which should be somewhere in the west of Hyrule. We can get another look at Kakariko Village in the game's key artwork, featuring its trademark windmill from Ocarina of Time. In this shot, we see Zelda learn the echo for a wooden crate, after the game prompts the player to press ZR when standing next to it. We then see Zelda learn the echo for a bed, and even a block of water in the next shot. This shot is interesting for more than just water though. It appears to be inside a rift, judging from the purple sky. There are chunks of terrain and other objects scattered randomly around, which will have once belonged to the overworld, before being pulled into this dark dimension. This shows that wherever the rifts lead to will be explorable, giving this game its version of the Dark World. Next, we see Zelda just north of Kakariko Village, judging by the windmill on the minimap, using echoes of water blocks to swim up a cliff edge. Just before she does this, we see a guy with some sort of acorn hat, which I just thought was cool. When Zelda swims through the water, a blue gauge appears next to her, almost certainly an oxygen meter, dictating how long she can stay underwater before drowning. We can see this gauge in later shots too, which marks a change from Link's Awakening, where Link could swim underwater indefinitely. Following this, Zelda uses her echoes to traverse an environmental hazard, using a wooden table, a crate, and a decorative shrub to avoid some wind. Zelda then makes a staircase out of old beds and a trampoline to jump into Gerudo Town, situated somewhere in the desert. We can even spot one of the Gerudo standing here, marking only their second ever appearance in a 2D Zelda game after Four Swords Adventures. We then see how the Tri-Rod can be used in combat. First, by summoning a rock to use as a shield and as a projectile. Once the moblin is defeated, however, it leaves behind a small trophy of itself, allowing Zelda to press ZR and learn the echo of the enemy, so that she can summon it to fight for her in combat. They won't last forever though. We see the first moblin she summoned begin to flash, likely indicating that it will soon despawn. Zelda then summons a spike trap enemy, and rides it like the spinner from Twilight Princess by standing on its eyeball, which doesn't look pleasant. She uses the spike trap to kill a crab enemy, which again leaves behind a small copy of itself which Zelda could learn from, just like the moblin. After this, she creates an echo of a smaller anglerfish enemy, and uses it to detonate a bombfish at a safe distance. The next shot shows a really creative use of echoes in combat. Zelda summons a chunk of meat, which attracts the nearby Gways. She then summons a Deku Baba echo to rudely interrupt the bird's feast, killing two in one bite. After this, we see Zelda frantically escaping the expanding rifts. Judging from the fact that Tri only has 3 triangles, like they did when they first met Zelda, I'd wager that this shot takes place very early on in the game, perhaps somewhere in the basement of Hyrule Castle. Next is Zelda using her echoes to make a staircase and traverse a jungle or forest environment. Notably, she's able to walk on top of the trees once she climbs up there, which previously have only ever been area boundaries in 2D games. Again, this just shows how much of a sandbox this game is going to be. The conventional rules of 2D Zelda don't apply, and Zelda can use her echoes to get as creative as she wants. In the next shot, Zelda winds up a clockwork Octorok, try saying that 10 times fast, which she then carries on her head and uses to take on an enemy moblin camp. Notably, this doesn't seem to be an echo. No triangle appears above it, making it seem likely that this is a separate ability or item entirely. The next shot does show an echo, however. Zelda has summoned a bird, and uses it to glide across lakes of lava, perhaps inside one of the game's dungeons. Here we see Zelda inside a house, talking to someone who appears to be a Sheikah scientist, not unlike Robbie from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. We can't tell a lot about who this is or why Zelda is speaking to him, but there's a ton of great detail around his room, like these lamps which might as well be ripped straight out of Breath of the Wild, as well as another character, though we don't see their face. Following this is the shot of Impa fighting Hyrulean soldiers I mentioned earlier. which, like the one of Zelda escaping the rift, takes place right at the beginning of the game, judging by Tri's 3 triangles. It seems that the beginning of the game will involve escaping Hyrule Castle through the basement. Zelda first meets Tri in a prison cell, which will be followed by these shots. The castle's lower floors seem to be used for storage. We can spot crates of weapons, rope, jars, and even a goddess statue down here, likely giving Zelda lots of unique objects to learn echoes from. This shot is very interesting. Zelda stands before 2 entirely different types of Zora, who appear to be having an argument. The Zora on the left are River Zora, who appear in 2D games often as enemies, and the Zora on the right are Sea Zora, who appear mainly in the 3D entries as Link's allies. The only game to feature both types of Zora before this was Oracle of Ages, which shows conflict between the 2 factions, and this seems to be the case in Echoes of Wisdom too. This Zora resembles King Zora from A Link to the Past, and this Zora also wears a crown, making me think that both are the leaders of their respective peoples. Perhaps Zelda will have to calm this conflict during her quest. Another classic Zelda race appears next, a Deku Sprout. This one appears to be a business sprout, which we've seen before in many other games, and seems to run some sort of potion shop. But what are Deku Sprouts without the biggest Deku of all, the Great Deku Tree, which sits in a sacred meadow. Its design closely resembles its appearance in Ocarina of Time, and Echoes of Wisdom marks its debut in a 2D Zelda game. Ocarina of Time had Link enter the Deku Tree's mouth and explore the game's first dungeon, so perhaps inside the Deku Tree will return as a dungeon here too, or perhaps he simply fulfills a sagely advisory role. Next is another side-scrolling swimming section where Zelda flees an approaching whirlpool. In the foreground are electric jellyfish enemies, like those found in Jabu Jabu's belly in Ocarina of Time, and in the background we can spot a giant isopod creature, perhaps one of the game's bosses. Notably, Zelda lacks the oxygen gauge in this clip. We can't see any other UI however, so either it has been disabled along with the rest, or she will somehow unlock the ability to swim underwater indefinitely. After this, we see Zelda facing off against a boss, some kind of golem made from stone. This appears to be in the same temple we saw in the beginning, where Link originally fought Ganon, and Tri only seems to have 3 triangles here, making it seem likely that this is the very first boss in the game. This castle could be Ganon's castle, and Zelda might return here after her escape to investigate the source of the rifts. Following this is a sequence of clips showing the insane variety of Zelda's echo ability. We see her learn the echoes for a sign, some sort of cannon that appears to be blowing wind, a sea urchin, and a lizard enemy which could be a Lizalfos. She then uses echoes of spiders, perhaps Skulltula, to cross a gap by climbing their webs. We then see her build another bridge of beds to cross a gap in what could be a water-themed dungeon, allowing her to reach a chest, and summon a P-Hat echo to glide down from a high cliff. She then summons an enemy that appears to be based on a candle, which naturally sets the world on fire. The final shot of the trailer shows Zelda summon an echo of a Redead, which costs 3, but seems incredibly powerful. It's able to use its trademark paralyzing scream to stun a group of moblins who retaliate by throwing spears at it. It's gonna be so much fun experimenting with combat in this game, with the massive amount of options Zelda has at any one time. The trailer ends with a look at the game's key artwork, which will feature on the game's box. I already mentioned the Kakariko windmill here, but we can spot other details too, including a piece of heart atop this pillar. These are obviously Zelda staples, appearing in almost every game in the series, with the notable exceptions of the open-air Switch titles. Collecting 4 will complete a new heart container, and they'll be hidden around the world and its dungeons. Aside from this, the most interesting thing in this key art is what looms above it. We see Link and Ganon both engulfed in a purple glow. We saw Ganon defeated at the very beginning of the trailer, but as it was his trident that caused these rifts, I doubt he'll be gone for long, and it seems likely that he'll be the game's main antagonist. Link is also surrounded in the glow, either indicating that he is trapped in the rift dimension, or perhaps hinting that Zelda might have to fight against a possessed Link at some point in the game. But what do you think? What are your opinions on Echoes of Wisdom? Personally, I absolutely love it. It's exactly the fresh take on 2D Zelda that I've been wanting, and September 26th can't come soon enough. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you noticed any cool details that I didn't, then leave them down below. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.